Welcome to The Creative Thread. I'm your host, Meg Lukes, and I am so excited for our guest today, Sarah Cornish. She is an amazing photographer that I've been following for a very, very long time. She's also an educator and a mentor. One of the things I deeply appreciate about her work is her connection. She just has amazing connection and feeling within her imagery. She also captures motherhood so beautifully. A lot of her work also just has just so much emotion to it. It's very raw, very real. She captures like the emotional beauty of the everyday in such an inspiring way. So I'm very, very honored to have you here today.
Jeez, that was so nice. It's so hard when people are saying kind things and you're just sitting here like, I'm an emotional person, which I guess is evident in my work, but thank you.
It is very evident within your work. And when I'm looking at it, one of the other things I deeply appreciate about it is that it's so nostalgic. I'm really drawn to nostalgia myself. So
Very nostalgic.
just, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. For someone who is maybe like new to your work, seeing your work maybe for the first time, how would you describe what you create? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I feel like my insight as a mother myself has almost created like a thread of just longing and emotion and just kind of all the things that I don't want to forget. And I kind of try to give that gift to my clients. I think in our industry, when you have like the education side of things and then you're also a full-time photographer, sometimes people don't know what's like a model call versus like the real deal. But 95% of the work I showcase in my feed are actual families, and a lot of them return. So I think it's honest storytelling and it's being willing to let go of perfectionism. It's also, I feel in my family, it's very personal because dementia and Alzheimer's is very prevalent in like the older generation of my family. And I've had to lose a lot of like really wonderful women to that disease. And so I'm also very aware that when the time comes and I get older, I'm terrified that I might also lose my mind a bit. So it's very poignant. Like in my work of my own family, I'm always trying to like document the things and the feelings I don't want to forget. It's not just about like the pictures or what the kids are doing. It's how I'm feeling behind it. I remember years ago, I was really bad at getting in pictures with my kids because I've always been a little self-conscious, and I'm getting better with that now. But when people would say like, oh, your kids are going to want to see you in the photos with them, I always felt like they're still going to be able to see me because they can feel me in every single image that I take of them.
I love that.
It is nostalgic. It's very much like what I want my clients to also look back and be like, oh, my kid doesn't do this anymore. Because it's weird. It happens overnight. Sometimes you just seem to wake up and your kids are like a completely different person. I feel like parenting is just a series of like hellos and goodbyes. It's so heartbreaking. And it's also so beautiful, having a 24-year-old and then having a 1-year-old. Like I know already what I need to hold on to now. I have a whole different perspective. So anyway, I hope when people land on my work, they feel seen, wherever they're at. They don't have to feel like they need to be perfect or anything other than who they are for their work or their images to be like meaningful.
I resonate with what you said too about the older like generation in your family of women having Alzheimer's and dementia, because that is the case for my side as well. With I've lost a couple of grandmothers actually to Alzheimer's and dementia. So you saying that, I really get that. I really understand that.
It's cruel. Yeah. It's a cruel, cruel disease. I remember seeing the movie The Notebook when I was much younger and being like, okay, I think that actually really, it inspired my work a lot more so in just like the urgency of like kind of keeping record and being the family record keeper and the storyteller. I never intended to be a professional photographer, ironically. I started in my business in 2009, right when the recession was getting bad, because we needed milk in the fridge. Like my husband was working in aerospace. And so it was like, I have this talent, but I had been a photographer for years and years. I started when my oldest daughter was a baby. So I've been doing it 24, almost 25 years. So it's weird. It kind of found me. Like my work, my voice, really, it was nice starting before social media was big. I didn't have anything choose for me. It just kind of fell in my lap.
Hmm. Yeah, I graduated from college. I think it was like 2008.
Mm-hmm.
2008. It was when the market crashed. It was just awful. It was really hard to get a job. I
It was
remember that time.
It was very, and
Yeah.
I married for love. So it was one of those like cliche straight out of high school stories. So, my husband was lucky. He got a good job in aerospace and his uncle kind of helped him out. But, they weren't looking for like airplane parts and, things kind of shut down. So he ended up furloughed and we had just had our fourth baby. So I was like, you know what? I'll do what I can. I did not expect things to get as big. That was so surreal. It's still
Yeah.
surreal. It's
Well, your work is amazing. So I'm not surprised at all that, you grew and have, obviously a huge account, but a huge following and community too as well, because you really are iconic and
Thank you.
inspiring. Yes. And gosh, I can't remember when we started following each other, but it's been a long time. I feel like that, I've watched your family grow and
Like,
just again been so inspired by you. So one of the things I was curious about, I wanted to hear from you about is your work. Of course, it feels incredibly rooted in emotion and connection. That's what I see more than anything when I'm looking at your work. So were you always a deep feeler growing up?
my gosh, when I was a kid, I remember I would rotate my stuffed animals at night so that they all got like the correct amount of love and they all got to sleep in my bed. And like, I was a lover of animals and highly, highly empathetic, like to a fault almost. I feel like I was also very creative. I remember writing poetry at like 6 years old. I had a little poetry book. And my mom, we didn't have much money growing up. Like, we kind of come from a very small town in New London, Connecticut. It was like a little seaport town. And my mom for Christmas would get me things like pottery wheels, but they were like the little rose art, like art kits, or
Yes.
but I remember like all I wanted was coloring books and art supplies. So I think I was always destined to do something creative. I think this is the perfect outlet because it gives me the opportunity to like do something that feels meaningful, but
Hmm.
also expresses myself. Because when I was a kid, I also had kind of a hard childhood. And so I felt like I had to shrink to be safe, and being seen is something that I really struggle with. And up until I want to say even 10 years ago, like public speaking or anything like that scared the heck out of me. And photography was kind of a language. Like, it's a language for me. It's a way to speak without having to actually use words. And I know it sounds weird because I love to write, but even writing is easy because I don't have to communicate it out loud. I have time to organize my thoughts. So, like, as a child, I just felt very misunderstood. But I remember, like, I can't visualize, which is also something I've learned recently. I have aphantasia. So it's all dark in my mind. I can't like think of a picture and bring it up. So I had to feel my way through life. Like, everything, I can't see an apple, but I can really describe it and how it tastes and the crunch and the texture so everything is kind of, I see the details first and then the big picture later. And in order to see the details, you have to like zoom in. You have to be willing to be close and get close to people in your work.
Yeah.
So, it's weird, but it works. It works really well.
That's so interesting because I think it was like a couple years ago I learned about this. I didn't know. I thought everybody could visualize. Like I also realized that some people can't visualize in color. So some people visualize in color, some people don't visualize in color, and some people can't visualize at all. I didn't know these things. So it when I am teaching, I always talk about how we all visualize differently, or maybe not even at all, and what works for some in planning maybe a photo shoot isn't going to work for others. We all have different ways of going about it.
I couldn't plan if I
So,
wanted to. It's all I have to go in there, guns blazing. And it's crazy because even school, like, I never understood what the point of studying was.
Mm,
Because I also have ADHD. I was diagnosed in high school. So you can like give me all the information you want. My brain is not going to hold on to that if it's not in how I learn. So everything just
yeah.
felt like it was so much harder and it was so frustrating. But it's interesting you say that about learning about visualization because I am really good friends with a photographer. Her name is Joy Prouty. I love her very dearly. She's a good friend of mine. And I remember we did like a workshop together and I was talking about vulnerability and I was like, it's so easy. Like and she's like, vulnerability is not easy for everyone. So it's just it's weird when someone kind of like turns your perspective on a head because it makes you think of the world. And I feel like I even have more compassion now than I did before for people because when you learn like we're just so different. Like everybody is so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And I understand that how hard it can be sometimes to be vulnerable. Like a million things are running through my head when I'm sharing something I feel like is very personal because I always fear I'm going to be misunderstood. And my mind tends to go negative first. I know that about myself. And so it's something I've like constantly working on. And so I always am thinking, oh, these people are going to think this about me. They're going to think this about me and judge me and all this stuff is terrible. Like it's an awful cycle.
It is letting the perception like of other people kind of just go and be like, that's just their lens and it's coming from their life. In
Right.
practice, you're like, that makes total sense. But then when you get on and someone says something that's triggering, it's like, oh, that hurts my feelings. And I don't like that. I don't like the way it feels. But, I think when you're willing to just let people be people, and you learn it has
Hmm.
nothing to do with you, it's also very freeing. I feel like your life really can start when you kind of detach from
Right.
that. So I'm working
Right.
on it too. I'm learning. It's hard.
So on that though, let's talk about, you know, being a female because I feel like you talk a lot about women,
Hmm.
wanting women to feel seen,
I
right?
love
And
women too.
yes. And what does being seen actually mean to you?
I think so. Being seen is one of the hardest things because we're so multifaceted. So I feel like I tend to be a black and white thinker, which is very difficult because for me, all those shades of gray kind of go missing. And so when I feel like I have to share something, if I'm holding anything back, sometimes I feel like I'm being dishonest, which is not true. I think we are allowed privacy, and there are things that are appropriate for the internet, and we don't need to put it all out there, which took me a really long time. And so I've always really showed up as the mother version of myself. I love to nurture. So even just talking about like being a mom is one aspect, but I love to help other women. And I kind of hit a wall where I was like, when I'm not helping people, who am I? Like what is my worth inherently? What value do I bring as me without what I'm doing for other people? And, I think I kind of fell victim to the good girl thing where like, I wouldn't say I was a people pleaser because I didn't have interest in pleasing people. It was more so I was trying to stay safe. And
Yeah.
so, like I would just kind of let people roll over me. I would help to my detriment. And then I would start to feel like a martyr after a while, or I would feel unappreciated. And I see it a lot now that I've really healed a lot of that. And it's kind of like disservice we're doing in our industry because I think a lot of women, the imposter syndrome they're dealing with is
Yes.
they take other people's success so personally because they don't realize how awesome they are. So, it's one of those things you kind of get to the root of it. You have to heal that before we can all start to come together. And I've always loved community over competition, but I don't think it's possible if we aren't all willing to like look at ourselves. So for me, and women, I'm always just trying to show them that like radical self acceptance is messy. And sometimes it's taking accountability for the stuff that sucks and being like, okay, like I'm this way and this way, but I don't have to be that way to be successful. Being someone that's neurodivergent in our industry for years, I have worked with so many successful women and I've always felt like we were stronger together. Like for me, if I
Yes.
brought my talents, I've never felt the need to compete. I don't know if that's a gift or it's inherent to me. I'm really grateful I have this, but I understand why other women might struggle with that. And I don't judge. I think what's hard though is if we can kind of start to let women be themselves without feeling like they need to be an influencer or they have to be a certain size or their family has to look a certain way because social media in general has sold us this like lie that normal houses aren't enough or that we are not allowed to be. imperfect. It's that vulnerability. I think that's hard for people to also. So if I show up radically as I am, flaws and all, if I can say this is what I struggle with, it just gives other people room to do the same. And maybe eventually it can catch on. It really doesn't need to start like with a big movement. You just need to show a few people like, hey, it's okay to be this way. And then maybe they'll show a few people. It's hard though. In our industry, I've been here since like the beginning, and I've
Mm-hmm.
seen all of the trends. I see people hold their work so precious, and I get that because I do sometimes, but you don't have to take yourself seriously all the time. You know, you can be however you want. Art is art. It's subjective. It doesn't have to be like mine to matter. It doesn't have to be documentary, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of getting to a point where you're like, I love her because she is not like me, and I don't need to take on those qualities to be successful. And I don't have to run my business the way that she runs her business or photograph my kids without it. It becomes like a pissing contest if we're not careful, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
we don't need it. The competition is unnecessary because like my clients could give a shit less. They could care less
Mm-hmm.
if, if my work feels or looks like the person next to me. So I don't know. I think women, though, in general, like, we're very isolated. Motherhood is very lonely. We carry so much emotional labor, and we all do
And
things.
being an artist too, right? Because like
Yes.
we're isolated as
And a
artists, I think.
businesswoman, if you happen to run a bit, there's so many hats to wear. And then if you have no boundaries, I wish so much I had the boundaries I have now. I'm so good at saying no. And I used to think that meant I was being unkind, but it's actually me being kind because I can say yes to other things that are more important. I can say yes to my children. If I'm saying no to a session that doesn't align with me, then I have time to create something that does.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things we take for granted because, there's poverty, which is hard. I've been on all ends of the spectrum. We've had a lot of money, we've had no money. It kind of ebbs and flows. Business can be feast or famine in this industry. But one thing that I've resented is the time poverty, like not having the time to do things that I really needed or wanted to do. I missed my daughter's first homecoming because I had booked a free session. This was years ago. And I remember like trying to get her ready really quickly before heading out the door and just feeling resentful that I wasn't taking photos of her with her friends. I was out doing a free session, that I had agreed to. And after that, I'm sure I could have told the family to like, hey, but I just felt like this responsibility. So now going into it, I'm just very mindful, very, very mindful of
Yeah.
my time.
Yeah. I think that maybe it comes with age too, but I feel like once I hit 40, I was like really good at setting better boundaries for myself. And maybe it was also the timing in my life, too, with my husband came home from his
Yeah.
deployment, and I hadn't, during that deployment, hadn't been taking care of myself as much because I didn't really have the time. And then my son got sick at that time too. When I hit 40, I was like, all right, I'm going to do a little bit more self-care, and I'm going to set more
Yeah.
boundaries for myself and take care of myself because it's so important.
Yeah. It's
You know,
true. I'm
and
right there.
yeah.
I'm right there
And
with you.
I love what you said about self-awareness too, because I think self-awareness is extremely important, and I, I feel like with myself, like I know what my flaws are and I know what I need to work on.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. And I just love that you mentioned that, like
Yeah. And
in
being
regard
curious.
to that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like if you see something on social media, especially from another photographer, and you're like, why does this trigger me? Why does this make me feel the way? This person did not have me in mind when they posted this. This was not a personal attack. Maybe it's something I like, but it's also okay for her to like things that I don't and vice versa. And like, it just doesn't have to be that deep. You know what I mean? Like there are
Right.
times where we can or just mute if like it's getting to the point where like you feel like it's really affecting you, just
Yeah.
mute it. It's not
Right.
unkind. I think it's actually, there are times I've reacted. Like when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger, I was very reactive, and I didn't like do it publicly. I would never confront anybody because that's not my personality. But my poor
No, I'm
husband,
not either.
my husband would hear it all. He knows all the industry drama. So, it's hard because I look back and I have so much empathy even for myself. I was so hard on myself.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, I was my biggest stop for sure. Because looking back now, it was all a projection from me to me. Like I was looking at other things and then beating myself up for it. And then you go back to childhood and you're like, oh, poor little Sarah. We all
Mm,
have like a little kid in there somewhere. So,
right.
when you can learn to differentiate, like, okay, this is my voice and then this is the voice that was put there. Like sometimes those things that are triggering you on social media are just reminding you of like maybe what you heard as a kid or how you felt that one time you were bullied on the playground. I don't know. But there's always
Hmm.
something deeper. There really is.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to, you launching a business, I think you had said, so you launched a business, photography business, when you started having children, or what, like,
No.
when was this again?
So my first started photography really when I was like 15. My aunt was a really cool photographer. She was like nature animals, and she took me on a road trip from an island to California, and she put a film camera in my hands, and I got to like photograph national parks, but I didn't appreciate it because I was like, I want to go home to my boyfriend. So, looking back now, I'm like, oh, that was the opportunity of a lifetime. But then I had my daughter, Lily, and I was 18 when I had her, and digital was not a thing yet. Like, I'm aging myself, but it was not. I was using those disposable box cameras, but I was really intentional and kind of artistic. And then my husband brought home a digital camera from his job that was like really new tech for the time, and they would let us use it. And so I would play with that. So I would say, like, I've done it as long as I could afford to, but it really took off, I want to say, in 2006 when my son Noah was born. My husband bought me a used Canon Rebel from Amazon, and I was just enamored with this camera. And I remember I started a blogspot blog. Back then, they were like these free, and I would do a daily photo, which was not a thing yet, really. Like people weren't doing Project 365s, but I was just trying to learn my camera. So I kind of created this community because I would share like Photoshop tips and, like I was experimenting with my off camera flash. Like it was weird. I was just acquiring little bits of gear as I went along. We really didn't have the money for any of this. I'm shocked that like it panned out the way it did, but things started to get better for us. And then in 2009, I had my fourth child, and the economy just really tanked. It was bad. And we learned we were living in an apartment at the time. They weren't going to renew our lease, and we had to find a place to go. We had no money. So we ended up finding an apartment that was actually more expensive. I was like, I don't know how we're going to make this work. And my husband went and signed the papers while I was in the hospital with our youngest.
Mm.
And I remember posting in my blog about it, and people were like, if you make Photoshop actions, we will buy them to support you. And I had been giving them away for free at that point because Photoshop actions really weren't like a big thing then either. This was a whole different industry. Like it was weird. But I had a friend who was a digital scrapbooker. She put a website together. I took her last $100. It was our grocery money. And I remember telling my husband, like, I don't know if I'm going to make this back. So like this might be really stressful. And he was like, I believe in you. It'll be okay. So I didn't even really have a Facebook business page. I was posting all this on my personal page. And I went to bed that night after getting everything live, and I woke up, I'm not kidding, it was $7,000 all night.
Oh my gosh, this is
It
an
had
amazing story.
I was crazy. So it was so crazy that PayPal like shut my account down because I thought I was like a scammer. They're like, where's all this money
Mm.
coming from? We got that all fixed. I think by the end of the week I had made like $12,000 or $14,000, something like that. And it was like life-changing money for us at that point. So at the moment, I didn't think I was going to continue to be able to make that. It felt kind of
Yeah.
like an income tax refund. We were not as smart as I would have liked to be, but then it was just really easy to make money. It was weird. I would put actions out and it would kind of repeat, and this kept happening. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to start taking photos of strangers too around the same time. So the actions actually opened the door because I don't know where all these people came from. They had all been following my blog that whole time. That's why I always tell people with social media, it can be a metric, like a vanity metric, because I had like 3 to 5 comments regularly on my Blogspot blog. I would have never known that that was happening. I did also like do
Hmm.
digital scrapbooking, so I had a little community from that, but it felt like a miracle. It was
Hmm.
just so then I started taking photos of my friends, and then they had told their friends. I was probably making like $150 off of my photo sessions back then. But my
Mm-hmm.
goal was like, I didn't think I'd even make the $100 back. I was like, if I can just put gas in the car for my husband to get to work or, help with groceries and to
Mm-hmm.
start a business in a recession and that happened. That's why even now with the world kind of being on fire, I'm like, I know I can find a way to make this work out. It's hard. I have to work really hard, but I have so much hope in me because miracles it always happens when we need it the most. It's amazing. I think it's just that willingness to like put yourself out there. Most people don't start. They don't start. I just started. Like I wasn't ready. I remember,
You took the risk.
yes, I was shooting with the Canon Rebel still back then, and we didn't know anything about gear at the time because there was
Yeah.
no Click and Moms yet. So I
You know
picked
what's
out
funny is that we both have this similar background in gear. I started on film, and then I think my first camera when I launched
Canon
my
Rebel.
business years ago, it was a Rebel. And I
Yes,
think I was charging the same. I think you said 150. Like when I first
yes,
launched my business, pretty
and
sure
it
it
was
was
giving people
150.
prints.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting. We have this very similar background.
yeah, Blue Domain website. It was all like Flash back then. I remember I was really excited because it had music on it. And I had Ingrid Michaelson songs, and I'd reached out and she'd given me
Yes.
permission to use them. So I felt really special. But I think the popularity really for me was because I was always willing to help people. Anytime anyone messaged me, I was on board immediately. But I also feel like there was no one really making work like I was making at the time.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like an intentional choice. I wish I could be like, I like pirate. No, it was just because I was really self-conscious and really anxious. And so I didn't know how to pose or direct people. So when I'd show up to these sessions, I'd been photographing my kids for years. I just chased them around and photographed their
Mm,
families like I did my children.
yeah.
And people then were still very posed. You would go on a session and there'd be a man there every time with a full off-camera flash setup and a really long lens, and I'm here with my kit lens and my Rebel, sometimes in the ocean shooting, like not, it was so embarrassing, but like I just was so into it. I didn't even know to be embarrassed. And we had the mom camera stigmas. Remember, everyone was like, oh, she's a mom-tographer. And I was like, I
Ooh,
guess.
that's a pet peeve of mine. Well,
Yep.
because I always feel like sometimes when I hear people say, well, I just photograph my kids. You don't just photograph
No,
your kids. And when they say that they're taking a selfie or whatever, I'm like, no, this is a self-portrait.
it's
This is
art.
art. Yes.
You don't,
I'm
and you
like,
don't.
give yourself credit.
Yes, people are afraid to call themselves an artist. I remember people being afraid to call themselves photographers, and I'm like, you're just taking pictures. That's the heart of a photographer. It doesn't have to be, you use your iPhone and you're still a photographer. If you're taking photos intentionally, it's just a tool. I've seen the most phenomenal pictures come out of like the crappiest gear. And even having a business, like I hate when people think that they're not professional because they don't take clients, because it's just the amount of
That was
talent in
me
our
for a while.
industry. Yes, it blows my mind. I am so impressed. The Gen Z photographers, I am in love. I know that there's supposed to be, if you watch TikTok, there's supposed to be beef between like Gen Z and millennial, but I am their biggest, maybe because I have Gen Z kids, I'm their biggest cheerleader. Their work reminds me so much of the 90s, which is
Mm,
obviously, but I have a theory. We come from the 90s, but the 70s were so inspiring to us. And so I think our 90s is their 70s. Or
hmm
no, their 90s is our 70s. So it's just cool. It's cool to see like their nostalgia for something that maybe they haven't experienced, and like the messiness and kind of the rawness of their work. And it's something I wanted in my own work for years and just have always been kind of afraid, because I think if I had done it, people would be like, she's lost her mind. Like, what is she? They've opened like this door for people to actually be more raw and like
hmm
not take things so seriously. Shooting in full, I've been shooting direct light. I would have never, because it would have looked
hmm
awful. I've learned so much from them. So sorry, that was my side tangent, but I get really excited
No,
about this. It's really
no,
cool.
I agree with you. I have a 90s series that I'm doing, photo series. And it's funny because I am someone who is very organized, and I am a technical shooter. Well, I shouldn't say I'm a technical shooter. I follow the rules,
I am
and it's
too.
taken me years to like
Mm-hmm.
break them and
It is.
push myself to like do things a little bit differently and go of things, right? And so even with my 90s series, the 90s were messy.
They
They,
were.
they and so when I'm doing these photos, I have to push myself, make a mess, let things go a little bit because things should not be so structured,
No,
you
your
know.
work is phenomenal. Like, just, I
Thank
am
you.
always blown away. You have so much creativity in you. Like, it is such a gift. I have always just been
Thank you.
completely, I'm serious. I think it's just because your work is whimsical and relatable. And that is so hard to achieve, honestly. I'm also a technical shooter, so I know what you're saying. Like,
Right.
I had to, I don't even shoot in burst. Because when I first started photography, I read my camera manual because there was no Click and Moms or forums.
Yeah.
And so they were like, burst is for sports, right? Like you do that if you're shooting action. I was just shooting my kids around my apartment. So I was like, I don't need that. And then I remember swapping sessions with a photographer and her taking pictures of my family and the shutter was going click, click, click. And I was like, is your camera okay? Like, why does it sound like that? And now I feel I don't just because I would have to cull a million photos. I know me. I'm an overshooter and I shoot one photo at a time. I cannot even fathom. I'm so slow. I won't even pretend. I used to try to pretend like I had my life together for these things. I have no one
Right.
to impress. I own no lens caps and I take way too long to edit. It's going to be like my downfall.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we could all learn something from each other. And again, I know I've said this a million times, but what I have learned so much from in regard to like your work is it just exudes emotion and connection. And the way you use light too, it just fills the scene so beautifully. It's so romantic.
Thank
It
you.
just gives you such a good feeling. Like, when you're looking at your images, the way you capture families. So we've all learned so much from you, you know?
Thank you so much. I love my
Yeah.
clients. I think that work carries
Yeah.
energy. I really do. I think
Mm,
that's why people are so enamored with art. They don't realize that they're feeling the energy kind of like imbued by the person creating what they're creating. I don't think it means that everyone feels or sees the same thing when they look at the image because we,
mm.
of course, have our own lens. But I do think like I feel so strongly about what I'm making and I hope so much that translates, which it sounds like I wish I could perceive myself the way or even just a glimpse every now and then to see like what people see. Because for me, sometimes I'm like, am I falling off? Like, is this,
No, it
you
translates.
know,
I feel like just even talking to you now, though, your personality is exactly kind of also what I see within your work. It all makes sense, right? It's very authentic. And I do feel like you're very nurturing. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was that you are incredibly nurturing towards photographers, not just your clients, but your photographers as well. So, what kind of mentor did you need when you first started out? Did you have a mentor?
I didn't. And I think I remember there was one forum. It was called I Love Photography. And they were ruthless. And there was so much talent, but they were very much sticklers for perfection. Like everything had to be, they were even like anti Photoshop actions. And so I never had the
Is it on
courage.
Facebook? Or
No,
was it on? Okay.
it was an actual forum. I think I
Okay.
found it in 2004, but I never had the courage to post until like towards the end of that. But it was very ego-centered. And I learned a lot from like the constructive criticism forums, but I also would see how they would tear people apart and I always felt like why is that necessary? I feel like people are going to take away more of like the cruelty than anything that they're going to need to grow as artists. So going into like being a mentor, I knew it was important for me to make women come away feeling a little better than they did when they first found me. I think that we all tend to have a negativity bias. I know we talked a little. It's, but I think I've read somewhere it takes for every one compliment we retain or remember, we pick up like 12 pieces of criticism or something. So if you're
Yes.
reading a comment thread, it would be the negative things that would stick with you. So if I could just be the voice in there, like a reminder, like, okay, this person believes in me,
Hmm.
then maybe because I just don't feel like it's necessary to tear somebody down. And I have unfortunately been around photographers like that. And I've seen the damage it does. And I'm one of those people, I'm an emotional sponge. Whenever I'm next to someone, I can feel everything they're feeling. I cannot help it. I'm working on that. but it makes me feel responsible for them in a way that I'm never going to be the cause of someone's pain or suffering. I also think that in our industry, we all deserve a little nurturing because I think we all come from a background of the imposter syndrome has to originate from somewhere. I don't think it comes necessarily from our community. We're all bringing our own baggage in with us. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's just, I don't know, it's inherent. Like, it's just something that has always been in me. It's hard too
Right.
because I know when you're kind of an inherently kind person, people are going to question that. Like, no one can be that nice, but unfortunately, I am. I really do care way too much, and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm willing to take the risk of being wounded. I will say I've noticed this is so strange, but since my platform, like having to start over with losing everything, there's a different perception every now and then I'll run across somebody. And I think people unfortunately they're more validated by people that have a bigger following
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if it lands the way it used to. And that makes me sad because I'm still the same person trying to like be helpful. But
Right.
that could also just be my lens. That could be my perception of things. And that's something that I might need to work on. It's been really strange seeing like the difference though between having that and not having that because, for years and years and years, I feel like my inbox is still pretty busy. Like, a lot of people do kind of still talk but there are people that I was friends with for years and they're not around at all anymore. So, um, I,
Yeah,
I
that's
wish we could,
happened.
yeah, I wish we could humanize our industry a bit more. I think I'm just trying to like show people that we're not just like pretty squares in a feed behind the screen. Like everybody here has a pulse. And we're all
Yeah.
kind of doing our best, we're trying.
Yeah. The community within like Instagram has definitely changed from what it used to be. And I don't know if there's ever like any going back. I
No,
think it's sort of inevitable to, right, that it's going to change. And we grew up in a time when for a while there wasn't any
the
internet and
golden,
there wasn't social media.
yeah, it's
And
beautiful.
yes, and I know what you're talking about with like the cutthroat communities too. I mean, they still exist today, especially on
Yeah,
Facebook. I found them more than
yeah.
anything. And I don't share my work
I
there
don't post on Facebook
for
at all.
oh yeah, I don't really love Facebook. I don't really hardly ever post on there. I will say that I can only function with one social media. So
I'm
it's
most Instagram.
yeah. But yeah, people could be so mean. And no, sometimes it's people are sharing stuff and they're not even asking for constructive criticism, right? But people are still just feeling entitled to give that.
Yeah,
And then and then when people give criticism, sometimes it's not even constructive. It's just mean. No way
it's
is right.
there's no reason. When I had my main Facebook page, and I think at one point I had like 140,000 followers, people would come for me for the weirdest things. When we had our daughter Daisy, they were like, "Why would you give your baby a stripper name?" And I'm like, "I got it from Downton Abbey. What are we talking about? Like,
Wow.
why did
Wow. Wow.
you feel?" There's a parasocial element to Facebook that I haven't even seen in other places. I'm not on TikTok. I have like a burner account where I just watch like stupid, meaningless videos, but I told my husband, like, I don't make reels either. I need to. I need to start doing this stuff. And for me, I don't know why there's so much resistance, but when I think about making a reel, my brain wants to just like jump out of my ear and run away. I told him, like, the most devastating thing is I got to be a photographer for so many years, and now I have to be a content creator to rebuild all of this. And I don't want to be an internet personality or influencer. I just want to be like a
Yeah.
home base for the creatives looking for something safe. I've always just wanted to be like a lighthouse for like lost creatives. I've always tried to
Mm-hmm.
create communities. I used to do like a
You are.
project too, where I would create a theme and then everybody would kind of like create an image and I would spotlight things. And it's just more
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted everyone to have the opportunity to feel special. And I've had like the most amazing experiences. Like when I look back at my life, I've gotten to be like featured in magazines. And
Mm-hmm.
remember, I did like an interview with Annie Leibovitz, which is wild. And now,
Just
like,
amazing.
but when you look back at that, you're like, that was all really fun and exciting. But like, what do I really want to be known for? Like, what is the legacy here? Because now that we're getting
Mm.
older, like, what kind of work is going to matter for me in 15 years because we're trading our time. or
Yes.
turning the time.
I could not agree with that more. Years ago, I came across some work by Kate Woodman, and I love her. I love her use of color. She has a bit of like uncanniness in her work. It's a little bit surreal. And I just fell in love with her style. And then I started seeing other work that was very similar. And this was, again, years ago.
Yeah.
Erwin Olaf as well. And I was like, this is what I aspire to create within my work. I love this use of color and I want to do it my own way, of course, with maybe centering around especially the home because I do center a lot of my work. It's a personal, it's
Yeah.
within my house usually or studio or whatever. I looked to these artists as like, wow, this is just really incredible and inspiring. And this is what I hope to achieve, and I worked really hard at it over the years and still do. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. I think it's so important to be surrounding yourself with all different types of artists
It's
because
true.
I think
And
you
the same
learn
with
so much.
Sally Mann is mine. She was the one,
Mm, I can
like,
see that.
she moves me. And, like, wait, I can't even explain what it is about her work that just, there's such a raw quality. And she's not afraid of dark
Yeah.
themes, which,
Yes.
I think that's the facet of me that's hard to share because there is a well. Like, I don't know what it is. I am very, like, light and loving and warm and nurturing, but I'm not afraid of death and, like, hard things. And because I've been through so much in my life, like, there's nothing that I'm afraid to touch or go there or speak about, or there's just a radical acceptance in me and a non-judgment. I could even see myself being like a death doula or just holding
Right.
someone's hand in like their last moments, and because there's just so much love and compassion that I carry for humanity. And it's weird because it doesn't always translate well to people because I've also am
It
very,
doesn't.
very introverted. Like, I love to be with my family in my own energy. It's safe. But I like when people come to me and they're like, "I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "There's nothing you can't tell me because you're not going to shock me. I'm not afraid of like your past or who you are, what mistakes you've
Mm,
made. I'm not going to hold you." Granted, there is a line like if you are a terrible person, then I'm going to judge you because I don't like terrible people. But you know what I'm
yeah.
saying? We all have our
Yeah.
shit, and even like I have a weird sense of humor. I feel like this is what
Mm,
I've had a hard time with when I lost my platform. My Instagram was one side of me that is very much like sort of my pensive. I love poetry. I'm a deep feeler. I'm a deep thinker. So that ended up on Instagram a lot somehow, just because you only had like this little caption box. But then my Facebook was kind of like where my sense of humor came out. Like I would share kind of like our ADHD weirdness and like the
mm,
weird stuff my kids did. And I never understood why people were so interested, but now I get it. I'm like, oh, we were all neurodivergent in this household. We're not normal.
yeah.
And then it's just kind of trying to find like a happy medium and how to bring that into my Instagram now that my Facebook doesn't exist. And also being very aware of like how much I used to share with my children and pulling back on that. I will probably still share my family. I know like there's this faceless controversy thing happening.
Yeah.
I'm
Hmm.
gonna share my kids, but I do it respectfully. When they were younger, I feel like I was very naive, and so I would share like pictures of my kids around the house, and they were always in diapers. Or so immediately now that I'm older, like I went on to my personal Instagram. I made it private, and it's losing followers. I don't even care about that because I can monitor now who's kind of there. And I took down anything of my kids like semi nude, like anything that might be compromising of their privacy. But it's hard. Like, I think it's a hard conversation. I think I do respect everybody's right to decide what they want to do. I'm never going
Right.
to for that, you know?
Right. I do think that, most people
Hmm.
are doing what they feel is best for their family. In most cases, most people mean well, right?
They have to do what feels good. We can't
I
like
have
when
been
my
sharing
kids,
my kids less on social media, and it's just the natural way of things. I think as they get older and they're in school and they have activities, but there's also that like respect thing of like when I am photographing them, I asking their permission, letting them know what I'm
the
doing, letting them
same,
know what I'm
yes.
sharing. Yeah,
I
so
think there
important.
needs to be a conversation. I also think there just needs to be like a consciousness, when you're sharing things. Like even before when I'd share my kids, I'd never share anything that would embarrass them. I would never
Right.
gripe or share anything disrespectful. I was always, especially with my teens and my tweens, and like when they got older, I knew their friends were following me, and I didn't want them to see anything that would compromise my kids' privacy or make them a target for being like teased. The little kids, the where I struggle is like I don't want children to disappear from society. And I don't mothers and children in our society are already heavily judged. And if your kid acts human in public, if they have a meltdown, if a kid's on a flight and they're having a hard time, like people don't seem to look at those people and be like, "Oh, they're humans." They're having a human appropriate reaction to their age. And so, already in spaces, kids are not really tolerated well sometimes. And now with social media and everybody being able to like share their opinion so freely, of course, people find other people like them and there's commiseration. And so when it comes to children being online, being children, like if that disappears from society as well, what does that mean in real life implications? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like the whole scoop of humanity needs to kind of be shown for people to have empathy and understanding, because being a mom is already so hard. When you leave the house, we're
Mm.
very aware of how our children are behaving, their moods that day, and then when people are piling judgment on top of that, it's just, you want to fall through the floor. You just want to like,
Yeah. And the airplane example is like a perfect example because I have so
mm-hmm.
much empathy like tons of empathy for anyone that's traveling with children because I've done it myself a lot. I've done it solo where I was traveling to a conference that I was speaking at and I brought my daughter along. She was just a baby and I was nursing her. So I didn't want to leave her home. So I brought her with me solo. There's been so many times where I have been so supported by strangers on the plane.
Yeah.
People just offering crayons because they had some because they have kids. They're like, here, help, have her colored because I forgot them. And being supported at conferences with women swooping in and holding my daughter while I could, speak and teach. And I'm so grateful for that. But at the other end of the spectrum, like I'll never forget, there was a flight that my husband and I think it was my son who was a baby. We were going, I think either to Italy or Spain for a conference. And it was a red eye. And for 2 hours, he was crying. We could not get him to stop crying and fussing. And we were so stressed, and I just remember like having so much anxiety because we were trying everything. And both my husband and I were getting on each other's nerves because,
Yep.
we were trying whatever we could do to just have him not cry. But we were so concerned about other people judging us and being annoyed with us. And I think about that a lot because I always think about when kids are melting down, how those parents are probably having such a hard time and like so
Yeah.
stressed and worrying about other people and what other people are thinking of them.
And they should be able to worry about the child. Like they're on a
Right.
plane, their ears might hurt, whatever the reason, like they're having their own experience. And as parents,
Mm-hmm.
we shape their nervous system, which I did not know. I apologize to my older kids for my parenting all the time. But I feel like, being online and in these spaces, like it's so much easier for people to say whatever the heck they want to without consequence. And then it's just, I don't know, it's easy for these movements to take off. And I think we just have to be careful because
Mm-hmm.
children deserve to be seen as people, and so it just, even with Lily being older, we've had discussions and conversations around how she's felt about being on the internet. And she loves to go back and revisit the pictures and see herself. And we talk about things. And, my kids are also very nostalgic, probably my fault. So, I think it's just, I understand consent not wanting to show your children's faces, and I will always support that. I have clients who wish to not have their kids on the internet, and they've never seen the internet. I am there for them first. I am their
Mm-hmm.
photographer. Their memories are for them, and everything is a bonus. But I just don't think people should be shamed for having like their own ideals, because there's a
Yes.
reason deeper than I just want to share this cute kid's face. Like there's always something more going on, and I think it's going to be like one of those topics for a while. Either it's going to fizzle out and then we're going to go on to the next thing to be kind of like outraged about, or the industry is going to shift and we're going to have to figure it out. I'm always someone who can see all sides of everything, and that's difficult for me too, because it's one of those things, having too much empathy. You're like, I get why they feel that way, but also,
Mm.
and in our industry, as things kind of evolve and adapt with different ages and generations coming in, things are going to change because every generation does something differently too. So it's just being mindful we have a lot to learn from each other. I really think.
Yeah.
I really do.
The shaming thing is I've never been on board with the shaming thing because
No, I don't
people
like it.
come from so many different backgrounds that
Mhm.
they have different backgrounds, different things that they believe in, different morals. And
Yes.
a lot, like I said, a lot of people are doing what they feel is best. And in most cases, I think, truly, I do believe that people feel like what they're doing is the right thing. And so, yeah, it's really hard for me to stand there and say, well, this person, they shouldn't be sharing their kids online or vice versa. You know what I mean? I think
No.
there's,
People are doing the best they can with what they
yeah,
have, really.
I
And
I agree with that.
people have the right to change their mind. At any
Yes.
given time, someone can go, okay, I believe that, but now I have enough evidence to feel moved by this. So I think we also need to give
Mm,
people a space to evolve
yeah.
because I remember looking back at like my old Facebook and some of the stuff I used to post. I'm kind of glad it's gone because like, who was that?
Same,
What was I
same.
doing? Why did I feel it's so embarrassing? And now getting older too, and like looking back, like it was so public. Everything was just out there. I feel like
Hmm.
I definitely have grown so much as a person and I've changed so much over the years. I remember when people would like unfriend me and I would take that so personally. And now looking
Mm,
back, like it's probably better that that happened because, we just were not on the same page. I would rather someone leave than quietly resent me or hold me,
I'm the same
to
way.
like, yeah, I can't be anyone but who I am and I can't be for everybody and I shouldn't be. But I do think as I'm getting older, like I'm able to give myself the grace I gave everyone else for so long. And that's been really encouraging. I think just showing up on social media is not so hard. I'm kind of lazy. I'm not going to lie to you. Like posting regularly is so hard for me because I love seeing other people's work. Scrolling doesn't affect me. Like I will never be someone that scrolls and is like threatened or feels triggered. Really, I've long gone left
Mhm.
that season of life.
Hey guys, we have so much more from this conversation to share. So we're going to leave it here for today. Stay tuned for part 2 with Sarah coming in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening to The Creative Thread. Be sure to follow along for future conversations on creativity and the stories behind the work.